Hey guys, Bodom here to tell you about the latest from Suotana, Ounas 2, out August 29th on Reaper Entertainment. The album has 7 tracks, 39 minutes in length, and this is the band's 4th full-length studio album. They are a Finnish melodic death metal band. From a design standpoint, I find this to be a little bit of a Jekyll and Hyde record. On one side, you have certain songs that are completely tied in to the spot in which they show up in the track listing. The opening track, it's an intro, has to be there. Then you have 1473 Ounas, the biggest song on the record, not just from a length standpoint, but also from a sonic perspective, coming at the bottom end of the record. I don't think you can have a climatic track, a cinematic, theatrical song sounding like that anywhere else on the record. It needs to be at the bottom end in order for you to have a big climax and close off the record on that note. Afterwards comes Hatebreeder, Children of Bodom-Cover. Where else are you going to put that song on this record but at the tail end, almost feeling like a bonus track more so than a part of the album itself. Outside of these 3 songs that have a defined role in being where they are, the other 4 tracks, because of their cohesiveness and because of their balance, that you could move them around, and the overall experience of the album sonically doesn't get affected by it at all. So it's an album that has certain rigidness to some of the songs, but it also has a little bit of versatility to others. You don't always see records like this, so this album is very interesting because it also allows all of this to happen across 39 minutes and only 7 tracks. Once you get into the sound of this album, this is a very synth-driven sounding record, from beginning all the way to the end. Now, synths are such a traditional element in Finnish melodic death metal that having that as a predominant element in the sound of the album doesn't feel dystopian. It doesn't feel different. It doesn't feel out of character for the genre and for the band. The impact that I saw them on this record starts to tip the scale a little bit, and you start to see a movement of this band to a more defined symphonic power metal sound within the boundaries of their symphonic melodic death metal sound. This to me is very interesting, specifically when you look at the design of the record. If you're listening to this album, you can pick up some symphonic power metal elements throughout the album until you get to 1473 Ounas. That song removes the veil and becomes straight up a symphonic power metal track, more so than any melodic death metal song that they could ever release. It just has an epicness to it, epicness of sound, epicness of lyrics, epicness of vocal performance, massive track, over 10 minutes. Everything about this song screams symphonic power metal. So having this track at the bottom end of the record, sound-wise, works well because it allows the sound to develop and to have nuances that kind of lead you down this path without necessarily being in your face, is still allowing that core melodic death metal sound of the band to be predominant. But once you get there and the veil comes off, it becomes apparent that the shift had actually been there from the get-go. This is a very interesting approach sound-wise for this record. I think it was a nice way to present it because it allowed it to be a little bit easier to digest, and it definitely did not jolt the record, and it did not deter the listener from diving deeper into the album. Now, within the soundscape and within this synth-driven sound, you still have 2 other core elements, the drums and guitars, that I feel play obviously a super important role, even though I still think the synths on this album are perhaps the biggest piece of the pie as far as the sound is concerned. But the guitars on this album sound great. The solos jump out, and I think having the key solos, the guitar solos, that once again, very traditional old school Finnish melodic death metal sound. This album has a lot of that, and the guitars sound great, the melodies sound great, the riffs sound great, regardless if the song has more of a melodic death metal approach or more of a symphonic power metal approach. The guitar sound on this album is really on point. And the same could be said for the drums. I felt like the drums help give some size, help give some substance, specifically on tracks that are very synth driven. It would have been very easy to lose some of that thickness and some of that substance by the songs becoming a little bit thinner all around, due to the overall melodic approach that the tracks have. So having the drums add some substance, some thickness, some heaviness to the way the sound is perceived and the way the sound comes across definitely helps the album in the overall big picture standpoint. Once you get into the vocals have a very consistent delivery from beginning to end. I mean, there are fluctuations. They are dynamic, but they're not incredibly dynamic. You don't need them to be incredibly dynamic on an album like this. And if you're a fan of the band and if you've been listening to the band, this style of vocals, this approach works really well for them, and it works really well on this album. And it's always nice to have for an album that is very synth driven. Once again, it's very important to allow the vocals to be heavy, to be aggressive, to have intensity, because you need that sense of consistency to balance things out in the big scale and not allowing the album to be too thin sonically all around. Now, when I look at this album and after listening to it multiple times, I gotta say I enjoy the sound, I enjoy the approach, I enjoy the growth, the subtlety of that growth. I enjoy the song like 1473 Ounas, I'll be talking more about it. The Hatebreeder cover, like this is an album that song by song, it's super solid and it definitely delivers. But, there's always a but. This album feels quite short. If you take away the intro track and you take away the COB cover, this album has 5 songs. It feels more like an EP, a lot less like a full-length record. So it's an album that, while having great quality within it, it feels short of ideas. It feels short of substance. And I don't mind short records. I always advocate for short records, but short records that have a sense of direction and a sense of purpose from the get-go all the way to the end. This album doesn't offer me that consistency. I think this album needed a little bit more. It needed a little bit more in terms of length. It needed a little bit more in terms of what the tracks give you, and it needed a little bit more in terms of what the tracks are. So I think that is the only downside of this record. It feels like an EP that got stretched out into a full record by adding an intro and a cover song. As far as favorite tracks are concerned, I want to start off with Winter Visions. Great riff on this track. The synth melody adds a lot of texture to the sound, and it has that very Finnish melodic death metal style and approach. I love that. Something that this band does really well, bringing that back to the roots, even though on this song I really feel like the synths add even more melody than what I was expecting coming in. But it's still a very riff-driven song, perhaps a little bit more riff-driven than synth-driven track. The vocals add a lot of intensity, a lot of aggression, matching the flow of the riffs with the vocals. It's really cool for a track like this. Then once you get to the chorus is super catchy, super hooky. I love the vocal layers that they added to that chorus, making the chorus feel even bigger, allowing the verses to be more narrow, more ripping through, and then the chorus a little bit bigger, a little bit more substantial, if you will. Having a keyboard solo followed by a guitar solo, it's definitely an old school element that Finnish melodic death metal bands perfected, Children of Bodom being one of them. Then we have a track that I've talked about a lot already, which is 1473 Ounas, featuring Zoe of Cradle of Filth. Now, this is an epic track. It's over 10 minutes in length. So right away, from that standpoint, for an album that has 39 minutes, this song takes about a quarter of the record. It's a lot. And it's a song that definitely has more of a symphonic power metal, epic power metal song in terms of the sound, the essence, the lyrics, the vocal performance. Everything about this song screams symphonic power metal. It still has some traditional melodeath elements in it, of course, but overall it's definitely a track that offers a journey, a sense of purpose, beginning, middle, and end. Has all of these different condiments in it, is massive in sound, it just sounds larger than life. And then Zoe comes at the tail end of the track and she adds brightness to the song, she adds light to the song, she makes the song feel and sound even bigger, if that's even impossible, even bigger. I honestly felt like she really defined or helped define the cinematic essence that the song already had. Last but definitely not least, Hatebreeder, the COB cover. This track makes sense. I mean, any COB song as a cover on this record would make sense. And the reason is simple. This band is heavily influenced by Children of Bodom. So having a Children of Bodom cover, to me, is something that I don't even think twice about it. Now, it sounds good, it's delivered in a good way, it has elements of the original, obviously, it feels like a Children of Bodom track, obviously, but it also has the DNA of the band. For example, the synths on this track I felt were a little bit more pungent than what they were on the original. It's also a track that vocally and sonically really matches well to the experience that you get early on in the record. The first 3 to 4 songs of the album are very similar in experience, in sound, in texture to what this Children of Bodom-Cover offers. So having this at the tail end of the record, like I said, in my opinion, it really helps extend the album more than anything else, but it's a great cover nevertheless. This is it, Suotana with Ounas 2, once again out August 29th on Reaper Entertainment. Let me know your thoughts on the band, hit me up in the comment section. I'll see you all in the next video. Take care, guys.